How has Britain gotten into the mess that it is in today?
Through a succession of very bad political leaders. We don't have politicians who have many convictions anymore. Younger generations have lost trust in the whole system. The system that we currently have has failed them.
You've watched British politics up close for more than 30 years. What do you think of today's political class?
I think today's cadre of politicians are generally of a lower quality. You don't see the leaders, you just utter inanities, and it convinces no one. And people see through this.
What do you think about Britain's future?
Really, really hacks me off when people talk down this country.
What do you think is the biggest problem in Britain that no one's talking about?
One that immediately springs to mind.
Hello and welcome to today's very special Daily Expresso with me, JJ and Nisiobi, and a very special guest. One of the few broadcasters I listen to outside of this channel, Iain Dale of LBC and author of many books, but your new biography, Have I Said Too Much? I've read it. Actually, I've read it. I didn't realise you had so much.
They all say that.
I didn't realise you had so much hair, Iain, back when you were younger.
Yeah, I did have a very good head of hair, which is a warning to many people.
Tell me about it. I'm halfway there, mate. I'm halfway there. We'll get to your book in a moment and your love of Margaret Thatcher. Trendy T-shirt. Yeah, very trendy. But we'll get to that. First question, though. How has Britain gotten into the mess that it is in today?
Oh, my God. I thought this was going to be a nice light interview. Through a succession of very bad political leaders, I would have to say, who failed to lead. Too many have followed public opinion rather than tried to lead it. We don't have politicians who have many convictions anymore. They sort of sway with the wind. And the electorate has lost trust in politics. They've lost trust in the economy. Younger generations have lost trust in the whole system. And that, I think, is actually the most serious thing, because I believe in free markets, I believe in capitalism, but I completely understand why a lot of young people don't, because the system that we currently have has failed them. They see my generation as a rich generation. We've had all the luck, we've had all the opportunities, which I think is a bit of an exaggeration because, believe it or not, graduate unemployment did exist in the 1980s. But if you can't accumulate capital to allow you to buy a house, why would you believe in capitalism? Well,
what's the alternative for them? They want to go live in Cuba? They want to live in North Korea? Those places are doing great.
Well, most people don't think of it in those terms. Most people don't even think about politics. You and I are odd in that respect. Most people just want to get on with their lives. And so they don't obsess about political theories or whether one politician is better than another. But then they hear someone like Zach Polanski comes along, who's offering superficially something. I did his podcast yesterday, by the way.
Thanks for plugging it.
I think yours will be out first. And so they see this guy who seems to relate to them. Looks a lot younger than he actually is. He's got attractive answers until you actually look into them and think, well, what are the implications of his policies? So I'm not surprised that he's doing well. I'm not surprised also that Nigel Farage is doing well among young people. This is one of the unspoken things, I think, in Westminster. Nobody has cottoned on to this. That you look at the opinion polls among sort of 18 to 28-year-olds, Reform are way up there.
Yeah.
And that ought to concern a lot of people, but nobody wants to ask why. They just sort of think, well, okay, the Conservatives failed for 14 years, Labour has failed in their first 2 years, and let's say Labour fail in the whole 5 years. Let's say Burnham doesn't deliver. I mean, I hope he does, because although I'm not his politics, I think if the Prime Minister of the country is a success, everyone else is more likely to be successful. But say he fails. So we get to 2029 and Reform win the general election. Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister. Now, what happens then if Nigel Farage fails? What happens if he finds that the whole machinery of government is set against him and just will not implement things? And to be fair to Keir Starmer, I think he's had a bit of that.
Yeah.
Where for some reason, he and a lot of his cabinet, with a few exceptions, haven't been able to pull the levers of power.
Yeah.
Because the institutions are just, in the way that they operate, are set against change. So Burnham is going to come in and try and institute a much more aggressive form of devolution. Well, good luck with that, I would say, because I've never met a civil servant who is willing to say, yeah, you have some of my power.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope he knows how he can drive that through, because all politicians mouth that they believe in localism, sort of decisions made at the lowest level. None of them have ever implemented it. And because there is institutional resistance to it. I mean, I'm sounding a bit like Liz Truss here, aren't I?
No, not as crazy as Liz Truss yet, no. The blob and the men in the grey suits.
I mean, I think she has a bit of a point. I mean, I think she exaggerates it to make her point. But there is a bit of that within government, and there has been for decades. And very few prime ministers ever. Tony Blair found that a real frustration.
Yeah.
Margaret Thatcher managed to drive through a lot of her reforms against the civil service's will, and because she was there for so long, I think in a sense they all became institutionalized with her.
Yeah.
But most of our recent prime ministers haven't really had the length of time to drive that through.
Well, let's say Farage and Reform get into power and they mess it up massively. Then what does happen next?
Well, that's my fear. I don't know.
And
we all ought to fear that.
Yeah. I presume we'll just go full circle. I don't think Zach Polanski and the Greens are going to ever get near power. I think if Reform come in and they mess things up, people will say, because people have short memories, they're going to say, actually, maybe the Tories weren't so bad after all. They were the adults in the room. Let's go back and vote for them.
This is where Kemi Badenoch has a lot in her favour. And I think it's really interesting how she's grown into the role of leader of the opposition. If we were having this conversation in July 2025, we would be having a very different conversation.
Yeah.
But she's had a really good year. But she hasn't yet dragged the Conservative Party up behind her. She's the most popular political leader. People like the fact that she's very straight talking. Sometimes they think she goes a little over the top, but I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
She's coming out with some interesting new policies and ideas. But the Conservative Party is still way behind her own personal popularity. But, and again, Westminster media haven't really covered this very much. Instead of polling 16, 17, 18%, the Conservatives are now polling 19, 20, 21%. Now, that doesn't sound a big shift. But when you've had the kind of defeat that they had in 2024, it's going in the right direction. So that's all she can hope for, I think, at the moment. Just keep plodding on, keep making an impact here and there. And I think this time next year, they may have overtaken Reform in the polls. Now, that's possibly a bold prediction.
Is that wishful thinking because you support the Tories?
Well, I do support the Tories, and it possibly is wishful thinking. We will see. But Reform have come down from about 30, 32% now to sort of 24%. And I remember last September, I wrote a piece, sadly not for the Express.
Who was it for?
iNewspaper, saying that I thought...
Barely call that a newspaper, but go on.
Bitch. I wrote a piece saying that I thought Reform had peaked.
Yeah.
And I was ridiculed for it. Well, I was right.
Yeah, you were.
I mean, it's nothing to say they can't peak again, but at the moment, their trajectory is down. The Conservative trajectory is up. I think Burnham, for the first few months, will have an upward trajectory. So I think it's perfectly possible that by September, Reform will be third in the polls. Possible. Yeah. Not probable, not inevitable.
Yeah.
And I mean, if Farage loses the Clacton by-election
to a bin,
I mean, how can we even have this conversation? I mean, it is possible that he might think, well, sod this game of soldiers, I'm off. I'm going to make some serious money in the US. Yeah. Well, what happens to Reform then?
Oh, then they're decimated. I don't think Reform can be reformed without Nigel Farage. If he leaves, I think that
I think that is true at the moment because, I mean, imagine the leadership contest because, I mean, he couldn't actually appoint his successor.
No.
And they will be like rats in a sack and it will be brilliant to watch.
Yes, it will. Everything is digital now, isn't it? Your money, your photos, even your loyalty card at the coffee shop. So there's something quietly brilliant about owning one thing that isn't on a screen. Real gold bullion. The weight of it, the shine, it's just a lovely thing to hold. The Pure Gold Company, which was voted the UK's best gold broker, makes owning physical gold really simple. Tax-free gold coins from the Royal Mint with friendly one-to-one guidance from your first question to final delivery. There's no jargon, no pressure, no call centre queues. It's insured to your door or stored in a secure professional vault. So visit the Pure Gold Company today and tell them JJ sent you. What do you think is the biggest problem in Britain that no one's talking about?
Well, I'm not sure it's the biggest problem, but the one that immediately springs to mind, and I think this is partly why people don't trust government or politics anymore, is the unaccountability of government organisations. Give you an example. This process did start under Margaret Thatcher, but it was under John Major and Tony Blair that it really gathered pace. The agentsification of government, where a lot of people say, well, let's make the NHS, take it out of politics. Let's make it non-political. I'm thinking, hang on a minute. The NHS spends £230 billion a year and you want to make it non-political? Well, the whole point of government is you elect a government and they've done a manifesto and they say what they want to spend the money on and how and why they're not going to spend money on one thing, but they're going to spend money on another. Well, take the politics out of the NHS and we have no democratic accountability for that money being spent.
Yeah.
So you've got, NHS England, I suppose, which the government have, I think, they're rightly abolishing. That's a perfect example of an unaccountable quango, because the Secretary of State for Health, who we would naturally think ought to be held accountable for things, oh yes, but that was a decision by NHS England.
Yeah.
The Secretary of State for Transport, an MP writes to the Secretary of State for Transport saying, my constituents in Norfolk are very concerned that on every Friday night, the Highways Agency, I think it's called National Highways now, they're closing the A11 every Friday night without telling anybody.
Yeah.
And then so you think, okay, well, I'll go up the A12 via Ipswich. Then they close that on the same night.
Yeah.
So you write to the Secretary of State, nothing to do with me, Gov. That's a decision for National Highways. What is the point of being a minister if you have no power over these organisations? So in this halcyon world where Iain Dale becomes Prime Minister, those things would all be brought back into government to be democratically accountable. And I think that would, people still might not like the things that they do, but at least they have a mechanism to complain and try and persuade the government to change things.
If you're Prime Minister, can I be your deputy?
Oh, there are a lot of people want that job. You'll have to prove yourself during the rest of this interview.
Now, you've watched British politics up close for more than 30 years. What do you think of today's political class?
It's very easy to descend into the phenomenon of old Gittism, where you say, well, of course, it wasn't like it was back in the day. But you see, I think in 1983, there were a lot of people that said, well, you look at Thatcher's cabinet, it's full of pygmies compared to Macmillan's. So I think you have that over the years.
Yeah. Having
said that, I think today's cadre of politicians are generally of a lower quality. There are some notable exceptions to that. But if you go through all of the parties, you don't see the leaders. You see lots of people who are willing to take orders and go onto the media, and I'm sure you have this all the time as I do, where they just utter inanities. And it convinces no one. And people see through this, and I don't understand why the politicians don't. And then, of course, as soon as they stop being a minister, they become interesting people again. So I am hopeful that might change under Andy Burnham. It might be a forlorn hope.
But here's a great example of that. 403 Labour MPs, and only Andy Burnham's the one who apparently is fit for purpose.
Exactly. Andy Burnham, I think, is a great salesman. But I remember taking my American friend Daniel Forrester to meet Margaret Thatcher once.
He's in your book.
This anecdote is in the book. And it was at the Reform Club, very sort of like austere stuff. Impressive place, but quite sort of stuffy. I always feel out of place there, being an Essex boy and not from the establishment. I always think if I eat there, I always think I'm going to do something my mother would admonish me for. Anyway, she had finished doing her speech, and he said, I've got to meet her. I said, well, go and introduce yourself. Oh, I can't. So anyway, I went over and introduced him to her. And Margaret Thatcher was very short, probably 5'4", something like that. And Daniel's sort of 6'2", strapping, good-looking American, just what Margaret Thatcher liked. And she looked at him in the eye, and the finger came up, and she started jabbing him in the chest and saying, "Your president, President Clinton, he is a great communicator. The trouble is he has absolutely nothing to communicate." And with that, she just turned around and flounced off. And he just stood there thinking, oh, my God. Now, Andy Burnham, I think, has got to convince us all. He doesn't need to convince us that he's a good communicator. We can see that. Mm-hmm. But a good salesman has to have a product to sell, a good product to sell. And at the moment, as we sit here like a few days before he becomes Prime Minister, we don't know what that product is. Yeah. And I just hope to God that he does. And I think it would have been much better had his ascension to power been delayed until September, because a bit like the Americans have a 3-month transition between presidents. Yeah. I think it would have been much better for him to get his ducks in a row, to decide what he wanted to do, and then become Prime Minister. And I fear... And I think this is why he won't subject himself to any scrutiny. He's done 2 interviews, one with my colleague Andrew Marr and the other one with Gary Lineker. Well, I'm sure that the Gary Lineker one was a very searching interview. And they didn't talk about football at all. It was all about the money supply. So I just fear that after 3 months, a lot of Labour MPs, maybe a lot of the electorate, are going to be screaming, "Bring back Starmer."
I said the same thing in my column about 2 months ago, which is available on the Daily Express. I feel people voted for Starmer because, well, the Tories are terrible. Starmer's got a home run. He's going to be great. He comes in, he's terrible. And now it's Andy Burnham. Well, Starmer was a terrible communicator. Yeah. No one likes Starmer. Burnham's going to be great. No,
and he's got away with making out that his record in Manchester was absolutely stellar. Yeah. Well, I think as a city, Manchester has developed hugely, but it was actually under Sir Richard Leese, the leader of Manchester City Council, who started all of this. And if you look at some of the actual statistics, I mean, the buses in Manchester are apparently wonderful. Yeah. Isn't it strange, though, that the usage of buses has gone down by 12%? I mean, I don't live in Manchester. I'm sure there's an explanation. You look at the number of homeless people in Manchester. In 2019, Andy Burnham committed to eradicating homelessness in Manchester. You draw a graph now, and it's gone up massively. Yeah. The poverty in Manchester is now higher than I think in any other major city. So you look at that record and you think, really, Andy, have you done such a brilliant job? But nobody in the media is questioning it.
No, not yet. We'll wait till the Messiah's returned, and then we'll start poking.
No, he's not a Messiah. He's just a very naughty boy.
Who do you think is the most underrated politician you've ever met? And I'm going to ask you after this who the most overrated politician is.
Oh, my God. The most underrated politician. Paddy Ashdown.
He wasn't underrated.
I loved Paddy Ashdown.
Everyone loved Paddy Ashdown. He wasn't underrated. Everyone thinks he was great.
I remember interviewing him once, not long before he died. It was a quite sort of in-depth interview. And I said to him, "What's your biggest regret?" He said, "That I never became Prime Minister." He said, "I would have loved to be Prime Minister." I said, "But what do you think you would have done?" And he said, "Well, I'm not saying I'd have been any good. I'd have just loved to do it." And I actually think he would have been a good Prime Minister, because a good Prime Minister or Cabinet Minister is not afraid of making decisions, is not afraid of taking risks. And I think Paddy Ashdown was somebody who would have been good at both of those things. Yeah. Gordon Brown nearly brought him into his cabinet as Northern Ireland Secretary. I can't remember why it didn't happen, but that was a definite suggestion that was going to happen. And I think if there'd been a Labour-Liberal coalition after 2010, it possibly might have happened. And he was, I always loved interviewing him, because whatever we were talking about, he would always say at some point during the interview, "Well, Iain, you and I, we've been around a bit. We've been in the political trenches. We know what it's like." And my producer would always literally disappear under the table, pissing himself with laughter, because he knew that he would do it in every interview. So I do think he was underrated. I think another one, if you want another one, Cecil Parkinson, who, had he not had the affair with Sarah Keyes and had to resign over it, I think he would have been in a very, very strong position to succeed Margaret Thatcher. Okay. And the whole course of our political history might have changed. I'm not sure he would have been a great prime minister. He was very sort of... There was sort of vanity about Cecil Parkinson, which there is about a lot of politicians, let's face it. But he was a brilliant communicator. He was first came to public prominence as the voice of the government during the Falklands War. He was a down-the-line Thatcherite, and I think had he not told Margaret Thatcher on the night of the 83 election about the affair, she was going to make him Foreign Secretary. And that would have been a great position to then fight for the leadership when the time came. So he's another one that I think could have made it really big.
We talk about today's political class. I grew up watching Paddy Ashdown. My kids growing up watching Ed Davey. You know what I mean? The two are not comparable.
Well, are we getting onto overrated politicians?
We are getting onto them. Overrated politicians.
I have to be a bit careful here because I do have to interview them all. So I don't like gratuitously making enemies. I'm going to pick Robert Jenrick.
Well, very good.
I think that he is exactly the sort of politician that the public despise because he's transformed himself into an uber Cameroon to a sub Tommy Robinson type figure. I exaggerate to make a point, but his language on race issues is appalling, and I've called him out on it, and we don't really speak anymore. And I warned Nigel Farage when Robert Jenrick defected. I said, you have just made a serious error.
Really?
Because I think that, clearly he and Zia Youssef despise each other. I don't think Richard Tice has much time for him. And I think he's totally overrated. I think he didn't have a good record as a cabinet minister under Boris. He was under Boris. He had to resign. He threw his toys out of his pram when he didn't get into Rishi Sunak's cabinet. Yeah. And then he resigned, along with Suella Braverman a bit later, over immigration. And he was the immigration minister. Those two, I mean, how they have the cheek now to sort of say, the Tory government was useless. You were key members of it. Yeah. Do you not remember that?
Yes. Robert Jenrick, we had him on the show. And before he came on, his team called our producer and said to our producer, James, Robert struggles to talk about his personal life and he struggles. You're going to have to really warm him up first. Now, I think I want a Paddy Ashdown. I want a Tony Blair. Those are politicians with charisma. And everybody lies, but those are honest liars, if you will. Robert Jenrick, I personally don't think he's trustworthy at all. And I don't think the Robert Jenrick that he puts out to the public is the real Robert Jenrick.
He's been very good at social media, but I think the guy that did his social media has now gone, and I haven't seen much of him on social media lately. I mean, that tube stunt he did, I thought brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So, I mean, he has had a few moments that I can't criticise him for, but he's not somebody that I don't really trust his judgment on things.
Now, I know you were friends with Anne Widdecombe. How do you feel about reform? I don't want to say using her death, but they've been publicised a lot, going and laying flowers and making a show of how much they miss her. What do you make of that? As someone who knew her.
Well, we should say we're recording this less than a week. Well, in fact, a week to the day that she died. I have done a lot of media over the last week trying to defend her as a person, putting the record straight. I've been on virtually every media outlet doing this. And I was really worried about doing that because when you do this in the wake of someone's death, even though, I was trying to explain her in a positive way, you can be accused of milking it. So, well, why is he doing all of these things? I mean, I think one interview would have been quite sufficient. I'm sure a lot of people are saying this. I've even had people on Twitter saying that I'm doing it to make money. Well, I'm not I mean, any fee I get from a broadcast interview I've done on Anne, I would donate to a donkey sanctuary of her, because I mean, that's what she used to do. And I found it a very, very uncomfortable experience doing it, because I mean, it's not, given the circumstances, it's very difficult to get the tone absolutely right.
Yeah.
But I wasn't willing to have her reputation. We should say she was an Express columnist for a long time, wasn't she? In fact, she loved doing that column. She was heartbroken when it finished.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to have these people, and I mean, Adam Bolton was one. I mean, Edwina Currie sort of was actually much more positive about Anne than I thought she'd be, because they basically loathed each other. But they both promulgated this myth that Anne allowed pregnant women, prisoners, to be shackled during labour. It's fiction. It never happened. In fact, she had a legal warning against your newspaper, because I think they sort of repeated it once, and she sent a legal letter saying, you repeat this again and I'll sue you. And this is many, many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And she did it to every newspaper then. And yet people who supposedly were going on television to not necessarily pay a tribute to her, but do a sort of like verbal obituary, don't do it unless you get your facts right.
Yeah.
And then there was all the Peter Tatchell stuff about her being a bigot and sort of appearing to rejoice at her death.
Yeah, his tweet was disgusting.
Well, it was, and I took him to task for it. And I mean, he has emailed me subsequently and said he really didn't mean it to come across as rejoicing at her death. But if you put an exclamation mark after OMG, Anne Widdecombe has died, exclamation mark, how do you expect people to interpret that?
Yeah.
And all of the stuff about her being homophobic, well, I know for a fact she was not homophobic. Yes, she did vote against all sorts of equality legislation. But you've got to look slightly deeper than that. What drove her to do that? Was it a bigotry, a hatred of gay people? Well, it's a bit odd, isn't it, that most of her male friends were gay.
Yeah.
I described her, in fact, I said it to her face once, you are the ultimate in the Conservative Party. And she said, yes, I know, and I love them all. Well, is she going to say that if she hates gays?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd known her for 29 years. On not a single occasion did I feel that she was wanting to discriminate against me in any shape. In fact, she did quite the opposite. She sponsored my application to go on the Conservative candidates list. And I told her in advance that I was gay. Whether she knew or not, I don't know. Friend of mine, Ashley Crossley, who was selected in Falmouth and Camborne in Cornwall, his local Tory association tried to deselect him when they found out he was gay. I just mentioned this to Anne one day. She said, right, give me his number. So she phoned him up, and 2 days later she was on, I think, a 7-hour train journey to Cornwall to tear a strip off his local association and tell them what idiots they were. I mean, maybe idiots is the wrong word. Now, would you do that if you were a bigot?
No. Absolutely not. Of course not. Yeah. But you didn't answer my question.
What?
How do you feel about Reform and Farage using the death as sort of a spectacle?
I don't think. I think it's. Look, if you are anti-Reform and if you're anti-Farage, you're going to look for any opportunity you can find to find he said something inappropriate. I don't see how you can criticise anyone for going down to the house and laying a wreath. I think that's a bit much. He possibly went a little far in speculation on the initial little speech that he made. I mean, I think you could criticise him for that, but he's been proved right. I mean, his suspicions were right all along, and sometimes people's instincts are right. I mean, when I first heard that it was being treated as a murder inquiry, my initial instinct was that there would be some sort of terrorism or political aspect to it.
Yeah.
The police tried to take us away from that. I thought that Devon, the police and crime commissioner for that area, I thought she did a brilliant job of saying, look, I understand people will speculate, but can you please do it in your own home? Don't do it in public. I thought, what a brilliant thing to say. And you can argue that one or two Reform politicians did go over the top, but she was one of them. She was part of their tribe. And I think the Conservatives feel exactly the same. I mean, she was part of the wider Conservative family. Even though she defected from the Conservative Party, she still had many supporters and admirers in the Conservative Party. So I'm not going to sort of jump on the bandwagon of having a go at Farage and Reform over that. I think a lot of their fears have proved right.
Okay. Right, a quick pause in the podcast to tell you about our sponsor, Incogni. You had those phone calls from numbers you don't recognise, or you go in your inbox and there's emails for stuff you did not sign up for. Well, that's because someone somewhere is selling your private information. That's where today's sponsor comes in, Incogni. They will contact these people who have been taking your information and they'll say, oi, stop, delete it. Go to the website, incogni.com, you type in the details, 2 minutes later, Incogni are sorting it out for you automatically. And because I love you, I've got you a discount. It ain't 10%, it ain't 20, 60% off. 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Just go to incogni.com/Daily Expresso or click the link in the episode description box below. Well, let's move on to your wonderful book, Have I Said Too Much?
Bloody time.
You already told us an anecdote earlier in the story about your American mate. That's in there. You've already plugged it. Probably wrote about it for the newspaper as well.
No, what I did do a column. Well, I mean, you can invite me to write for the Express.
Well, we don't pay very much over here.
Yeah, exactly. So I did write a column for the newspaper last Saturday about why men cry, or why men should cry more than they do.
Okay.
And of course, I've just spent the last week trying not to cry and sometimes failing. I mean, doing all of this stuff on the TV, I was. Because I will cry, as you will know if you've read the book. I think the most common word is tears or crying.
Yeah.
And I do have a tendency to emote, sometimes live on air. I can't control it. It's just, I've inherited it from my mother. And I've tried not to do it when I've been sort of paying tribute to Anne, but I had a little moment with Jeremy Vine, who thought the world of her.
Yeah.
And I mean, men should not be embarrassed to cry, but somehow it's seen as not a very masculine thing to do.
Oh, Tosh.
Whereas I think it's a very strong thing to do.
I often cry, Ian, normally in the toilets in the office here. How have I gotten to this place? I used to have such a great career. Now I'm just working with James Walker. And that's how it normally goes.
It's funny, he said the same about you.
But your book, why did you decide?
And the title is?
Have I Said Too Much? Why did you decide now is the right time?
If you're going to write an autobiography, you only get one chance at it.
Unless you're Katie Price.
Or
she's done like four of them.
Yeah, or Wayne Rooney. Well, I'm not Katie Price. And I know full well that, I mean, I'm not a celebrity. I've got a public profile, but I'm not a celebrity.
Oh, I think you are a celebrity.
Well, no, I genuinely don't think I am. I'm someone who's known through the radio more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And so I decided very early on, if I was going to do a book like this, it was not going to be a work of intellect. It was going to appeal to people who listen to me on the radio, just ordinary people who maybe aren't as obsessed by politics than I am. And I had a couple of people say to me early last year, well, now's the time to do it. And I said, why? They said, because you've had a career where you've met so many interesting people. You've had successes, you've had failures, but there's so many anecdotes that you can tell. Mm. They said, why don't you just write a couple of chapters and see if you like it? So I did, and I did. Yeah. So I carried on. And I think I wanted to do it while I was still vaguely in the public eye. Mm-hmm. I didn't see any point in doing it 5 years after I finished LBC, whenever that might be. So I thought it was important to do it now. I mean, some people can kind of say, well, you're a bit young to write an autobiography. Well,
they're lying.
Yeah, well, I turned 64 yesterday. So
happy birthday.
Thank you.
How'd you celebrate it? With John?
By launching the book.
Okay, fine.
by launching the book, going on Newsnight.
But it's actually genuinely a good read. It is. I feel like I know you better. I thought I knew you already because I do listen to you. I'm a bit of a fan. But reading about your upbringing and your parents and John, your handsome young husband.
Now that let me put the record straight there. My husband is 2 years younger than me.
Really?
So I'm not some sort of perv.
He looks a lot younger than 2 years younger than you. I double check those facts, people. Was there anything you left out of the book that you thought was too personal?
You have to leave things out. I mean, Anne Widdecombe said that she didn't want to write her memoirs because she didn't want a friendless old age. And I understood what she meant by that. I mean, she did in the end write a biography after she was on Strictly, called Strictly Anne. And I when I was writing it, I didn't want it to be seen as a book where I was settling scores, because believe me, I've got quite a lot to settle. But I thought it had to be more or less warts and all. You can't avoid... I mean, there's a chapter on the company that I was part of setting up, and I ended up getting sacked from.
Politico?
No, that was Waterfront. It was a sort of political consultancy.
Sorry, it's in the chapter called Politicos.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's in the Waterfront chapter. Anyway, he's now looking it up. No, Politicos was what came after Waterfront, so there might have been a little bit of an overlap there.
Maybe there was, but proof I've read your book.
So, well, thank you, because a lot of interviewers don't. I mean, and I will plead guilty to that myself sometimes, because there are only so many hours in a day, and if you're doing sort of maybe interviewing 3 or 4 authors in a week, you can't possibly read everything. So you have to skim.
I watched it while I'm crying in the toilet.
I'll give you a tip. The justification for it is, so you don't appear lazy, is saying, well, I'm just asking the questions that the listeners would want asked.
Very good.
Anyway, back to... I mean, the chapter, the one that Anne Widdecombe has advised people not to read, because there's an endorsement from her on the back where she says, full of fun, insight and warmth, but do please avoid chapter 6. And chapter 6, as you possibly might remember, is all about the different relationships I've had in my life. And what sort of coming out as gay and the implications of that. And I did... You may not think I have taken enough out, but I did take some things out of that, because it's like my Auntie Esther is turning 90 on Sunday, and I'm going down to North Devon to celebrate it with her.
Wow.
And I've sent her the book, and I did put a note in saying, please don't read chapter 6. But I've tried to be as honest as I can without offending too many people. I mean, there's only 2 or 3 people I've had a bit of a go at. Isabel Oakeshott and Burley being 2 of them. And the original title for the book was A Dish Served Cold. But everyone said I couldn't possibly use that, because they said it'll make people just think that you're horrible. And it isn't that kind of book. So then it became Shooting from the Lip. Get it?
Yeah.
And then I was watching Graham Norton one night, and he had Alan Carr on, somebody who I don't particularly rate, but he said he had a comedy tour that was about to start. It was called Have I Said Too Much? And I literally leapt off the sofa and just pointed at the television and said to John, that's it! That's the title! And it was only a couple of months before we actually we had to settle on a title.
Well, what is your beef with Burley and Isabel Oakeshott? I mean, lots of people have got beef with those 2 ladies, but what's your beef with them? Come on.
Isabel Oakeshott tried to ruin my relationship with Lord Ashcroft.
How did she do that?
By saying to him that I'd called him a word which I don't generally use, although I did actually use it in the studio about someone before we started. And she failed. And it wasn't the first time that I'd found her to be duplicitous. And so I thought, well, I've got to put that in. Burley, I think, in some ways is a very talented broadcaster. But I've had 2 or 3 run-ins with her. I mean, once where I was live broadcasting from an election debate, and she was obsessed by Periscope then. Do you remember that? Well,
yeah.
A bit of a fad about filming.
Yeah.
So she was walking round where all the broadcasters were, and I was live on the radio doing my then drive time programme, and she sticks this camera in my face while I'm talking about, I don't know what I was talking about, but, and she goes, Iain, why weren't you at the Sky News debate last week? I'm thinking, what? And so I just said, that's above my pay grade. Go and ask my boss.
Yeah.
And then did that to her. Sod off. And then another time, this was partly my fault because there was a terror attack going on, and all the news channels, including ours, were rolling on it, so to the exclusion of everything else. But Sky News weren't. And my producer said in my ear, I bet they would if it was a Muslim. So, of course, I stupidly then come back after the news and say that on air. John Riley, the head of Sky News, went ballistic and he sort of texted my boss, "This is outrageous. He's got to apologise." It's the only time I have actually ever had to apologise on air. And I had to do a tweet as well.
Oh, gosh.
And then the next day, she was presenting on Sky and I was presenting on LBC, and I have two television screens in front of me, Sky and BBC. And I see my tweet on her gigantic screen. But of course, I couldn't hear what she was saying because obviously I couldn't have the sound on. And I thought, what a classless thing to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not a fan.
Oh, fair enough. Is there anyone whom you work with whom you dislike?
I love all my colleagues equally. They are all brilliant broadcasters.
Ian, you and I have been in the trenches together.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, it's always good to have a little bit of creative tension, particularly on a speech radio station, I think.
Yeah.
And you see this everywhere. And I'm assuming you're referring to my colleague James O'Brien.
Well, yeah, because our viewers are very critical of James O'Brien.
Yeah.
Our viewers think that he's very one-sided and he talks down to people who call up. You don't do that. Nick Ferrari is fantastic. He doesn't do that. Tom Smallbrick.
You can't. I think you need to edit that out.
Tom Smallbrick doesn't do that. So, yeah, James O'Brien gets a lot of stick from our viewers.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I give him a bit of stick from time to time. But what you have to remember is that, we are a station that I think has a really good range of presenters. There are weaknesses in that we haven't got enough of this or enough of that. We've got too many of these. Everyone will always have a criticism to make. And James O'Brien is not really the out-and-out lefty that he's portrayed as at times. He's got some fairly socially conservative views. He's quite religious. But he's built up an audience, and it was really Brexit that did this, because I would say he was the first person in UK radio to really adopt the viral clip. And he got a huge number of new listeners, most of whom agreed with him.
Okay.
So he's got a very different type of audience to maybe some of the other shows on LBC.
Yeah.
But for the mid-morning show to sometimes outdo the breakfast show in audience figures, that is a real achievement. So you can't decry his ability as a broadcaster, because if he was, people say, we should get rid of him, he's bad at his job. He's not bad at his job. He's developed an audience, and I might think sometimes it's a little bit of a culty audience who are just sort of ultra Remainers, people who hate Trump and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Well, so what? He will decry GB News, but he is the left-wing version of GB News in some ways. He will say, well, I'm not, because I deal with facts and they do, up to a point, Lord Copper. People always think that he and I are at daggers drawn. Well, if you saw us having a conversation, you wouldn't think that. We don't socialise, but then I don't socialise with most of my presenter colleagues, because I rarely see Nick Ferrari. He's at the other end of the day. So, but I like to think I'm friendly with them all. I genuinely can't think of any of them that I really dislike. But if you look at the history of 5 Live, for example, there are plenty of examples of presenters who literally hated each other's guts.
Yeah.
It goes with the territory. Believe it or not, I'm sure there are people in the Express who hate each other. It's a normal thing. People have emotions. People get. What, do you two hate each other?
Last question. Final question, I promise, and you can go. What do you think about Britain's future?
Look, I remain an optimist. I think we are still a great country, and it really, really hacks me off when people talk down this country as if it's some sort of dystopian hellhole.
Yeah.
We live in a great country. It's up to all of us to make it even greater. We are going through a difficult time. But we went through, when I was in my teenage years, in the late 70s, Britain was a pretty horrible place. All these sort of strikes, and it was not... We didn't feel proud of ourselves. We were the laughing stock of Europe. I remember going on a school exchange trip to Germany and just being embarrassed. Oh. And I think there is a bit of that going on at the moment. So we need some real leaders, not just in politics, but in all aspects of our society, and people to actually talk up our country. I mean, people talk as if all of our manufacturing industry has gone. Mm-hmm. Do you know where we are in the league table of manufacturing companies in the countries in the world?
No.
10.
Oh.
And
that's such a small little place.
Well, we used to be 6 or 7, so we've gone down a little bit. But in services, we're like near the top.
Yeah.
You look at what we do on AI and fintech. We are, after the United States and China, the bigger, on AI, after the US and China, we are the best country in the world. I mean, let's shout about this a bit more.
Yeah.
You can play Jerusalem over this section. But I'm really proud of our country. I mean,
it must irk you then when people like Farage are going to the US and slagging us off.
Well, I don't think any politician should go to a foreign country and slag off their own country. I really don't. And I did take him to task for that. It's just not what you should be doing. Yes, we have faults in our country. Every country has faults. But when you compare us to other European countries, in most areas, we do much better than them. And I still think that Brexit gives this country the opportunity to punch above its weight in the world. And yes, it hasn't gone well so far. I'll freely admit that. I used to describe them as bumps in the road. And over time, people will get used to a new way of dealing with things. But I'm afraid government has not been good in getting rid of regulations that we don't need anymore. I think there's still people in government who still think at some stage in the next 10 years we may rejoin. So what's the point of getting rid of all of these regulations?
Yeah.
But history shows that if you deregulate, if you have lower taxes, you will increase economic activity, you'll have better growth, therefore you have more taxes coming into the Treasury and your public services can improve. I mean, why aren't politicians capable of saying that sort of thing anymore? It's just, we need to spend more money on this, we need to spend more money on that, without a second thought of where it's coming from. And when you have a government that has not a single cabinet minister that's ever started or run a business, don't be surprised when the Chancellor says, let's put national insurance up, let's put the minimum wage up, and I'm sure that won't have any effect on jobs in the hospitality sector, and hey presto, it has. You don't have to be a doctor to run the NHS, but you do need to have people with different backgrounds, and they haven't got any.
Yeah.
And there are Labour MPs that have run businesses, but none of them are in the in the cabinet.
Yeah.
That's a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, but it's a great answer. Okay, there's one more question. Just one more question. I feel like Columbo. Just one more thing. Where's the book available?
In all bad bookshops. I have an online bookshop called Politicos because, as you see in the book, I used to run an actual bookshop called Politicos. So if anybody wants a signed copy, they can order through politicos.co.uk. But it's doing quite well on Amazon at the moment. But I'd really prefer, if you don't want a signed copy, order it through your local independent bookshop because not all of them will stock it. But as a former independent bookshop owner, I know how difficult things are at the moment for them. So if we can give them a bit of a lift, so much the better.
What a man of the people. Iain Dale, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Please leave.
And the book is called Have I Said Too Much?
The answer to that question is yes, Mr. Dale. You have definitely said too much. Leave your comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the hype button. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.